Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We are with our Brute Liberty Lass, who's 31st level and pretty close to 32nd level, at which point we will be upgrading our enhancements. So I'm not sure whether it's going to upgrade these. So I'm going to have to kind of do a test where I guess what I'll do is click the upgrade button when we get there, see how many it says I'm going to upgrade, and then swap one of these out, like this one, and then click it again, see how many it's going to say, so I can figure out if it's going to upgrade these or not. I don't, honestly care whether it does or not, but I'm not sure whether it's going to, and I just kind of like to know before I do it. We're going to probably not hit the upgrade button until I do some dinking around with some of these. For example, I think Bone Smasher, I'm going to switch that possibly to an endurance reducer, and maybe the same with Whirling Hands once we have a new attack power. We're going to be struggling with our attack chain if we do too much of that. One of the things I'm planning on doing, and if you're hearing a bunch of dinging going on, it's because one of I actually asked a question that's got my friend messaging me like crazy. I asked him something like, I asked him what he's reading, and he's reading some fantasy series, and I asked him, oh, when did Game of Thrones ever get finished? I knew it wasn't, right? But he was the one who tried to get me interested in those books, the Song of Ice and Fire, and I read 3 of them and hated them, and I stopped reading. And he was like, "Oh, they get better and better," and I don't think they do. But just to tease him a little bit, I was like, "So did you like the ending of that?" And he's like, "It never ended," and now he's ranting about George R. R. Martin and how he never finished the story. So you're going to hear a lot of dinging going on, and I might pause occasionally to see what he's sending me. Anyway, at level 32, we're going to take energy transfer. And then theoretically at 35 you would take Resurgence, and at 38 you would take Strength of Will. But I don't think I'm going to take Resurgence at 35 because it's a self-res and I don't need that. We died face planted twice in 31 levels. So I'm not going to take Strength of Will. That's going to be available, but it's ordinarily a level 38 power, and I'm going to do the game the way it used to be done. There's no reason to take this before level 38 since we don't have enough slots to slot the powers we have. But what I might do is take Hasten. That will help us with recharge. We'll put a single recharge on it and leave it bare for a while. We're probably not going to add slots to it, maybe for a really long time, if ever. But the reason I want to do it is when we get slowed, we can hit Hasten, and that will counter it. So that's the plan going forward. 32 will be energy transfer, 35 will be Hasten, and then 38 will be Strength of Will. And then after that, we'll go into the epic pools. I don't know which one we're going to pick yet. We'll see. But in the meantime, we have to board the transit and bust the lead negotiators. So this is a really annoying mission. This may be the only mission we do, because what happens is it's in the I think I'm right. This is the one where you're fighting Council or Fifth Column and the Freak Show. Yep, and it's in this map, and it's always nighttime when I do this, and it takes forever to find, and it's just coincidence that it's nighttime because this follows the city clock, but it takes forever to find the lead negotiators. I can never find them, so I'm not going to try to fly around and look for them because I can never find them when I do that. This is a huge map, and what I'm going to do is just target the nearest guy and go after him. As we go, I want to mention, somebody made a comment on one of my videos talking about that they're excited to see me do Dominator or something because they haven't seen me do ranged character. Now I don't know if you're going to define it as ranged, but I did do a Mastermind at level 50 on Rebirth, so you can at least see how I approach that type of a character if you're interested. I do have a whole 5 seasons or so worth of videos, level 1 to 50, and you can see how it goes. I also did some range stuff in the Iron Man mode, but obviously that was done sort of abnormally because we only played until the character face planted once, and then that was the end of it. And I know I did a Guardian, I think I did a Blaster and Controller, Defender, stuff like that. So you can see some of that. I do still plan to do a Dominator. I do want to warn you, it's only level 31 here, and we probably got many months to go before I hit level 50 because I only play this character for, an hour or so a day. We will start leveling up I will start leveling up off screen as the individual story arcs stop gaining us individual levels, so that I can do some of the flashback missions and story arcs, and we'll get experience that way. You won't be watching that, but it's still going to be several months, so be patient. The other thing is when that whoever it was that made the comment talked about it, they said that they're sort of the opposite of me. I play almost exclusively melee characters. They play exclusively ranged characters. And said, gosh, I always faceplant when I play melee characters, and I struggle with that. You're going to see me struggle with range. I'm not great at it. I've always been much better at melee characters. I stink at hover and using hover effectively, especially in indoor missions. One of the things that happens when you're playing a ranged character, if you're playing somebody that doesn't have defense, right, or resistance, one of the problems you run into, especially early on at low levels, is that a lot of the enemies, not so much these guys, but a lot of the enemies like the Mech Man and certainly like the Lost and a lot of the other enemies that you fight like Clockworks and stuff, they have essentially their primary attack mode is melee, and they do the most damage with melee, and they do a reduced amount of damage with range. And so one of the reasons melee can be difficult as a character is you have to get into melee range to fight them, and they're doing more damage to you. Back in the day, this was referred to, I mean, people used to say that scrappers, I remember somebody saying this, if you're playing a scrapper, this is when everybody was like 10th, 12th level, and people were complaining about face planting as scrappers and how blasters had it easy. And the person said it was a scrapper, and he said playing a scrapper is City of Heroes on hard mode, right? Nobody would say that today, and people didn't say that after a few months when we were in the 30s. But in the low-level game, it definitely felt that way. And the reason is that a lot of the enemies were designed to do more damage in melee. I remember somebody, I think it was in the same thread where the person, like, somebody posted about this, and then somebody else concluded, yes, that's why we say that we play the game on hard mode. They were talking about the Lost, the Headman Swordsman, right? And he said in melee they take out this huge, all caps, huge sword, right? Huge, just gigantic, enormous sword. And they'll hit you in melee for 50 damage. If you then hover into the sky in King's Row, right, like this, so that they can't hit you in melee, they'll pull out a pistol, a 22 caliber pistol, and plank you for like 10 damage. And so what they were complaining about is a scrapper has to get in there and has to take the 50 damage to do anything, whereas a blaster can back away. You can kite and stuff like that and avoid the big damage. Yes, you'll be shot with the bullet, but the bullet does like 20% the damage that the melee attack does. And so that's why they were saying scrappers are playing the game on hard mode. One of the things that was going on though back then was that a lot of players were taking mostly their primary powers, and then so you have to remember that in addition to everybody needing a movement power as a pool power, right? Fitness was not inherent, and you had to. A lot of people felt they had to take it, and they would 6-slot and stuff. So once level 6 came, that opened up the low-level opener introductory pool powers, Swift and Hurdle. You had to take one of those in order to take health and stamina. And then you had to take something like hover or combat jumping or teleport ally or whatever to enter the movement powers, hasten, to get to super speed and stuff. So a lot of people were taking hasten to then lead into super speed. They were taking swift. At level 14, health opens up, but so does super speed. And then stamina at level 20. So by the time you hit level 20, you needed to take the opener pool power for the movement, plus the movement power, plus swift or hurdle, plus health, plus stamina. That is 5 power choices, which would be all the powers from level, what, 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, right? Which only leaves you the powers from levels 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, which is 5 powers to get, right? You start with these 2, and then you only can take 5 more in addition to the pool powers you needed to take. So people would skip their secondaries quite a lot. You had tankers that only had jab in super strength, and then these powers and pool powers. Because in addition, the tankers used to take provoke, because when the game started, taunt was like Warrior's Challenge. It was a single or very small range, like single or 2 or 3 target taunt. Provoke was an AoE, like with a big radius, and so people were like, they took provoke instead of taunt or in addition to taunt. And so you had tankers that their only primary powers were punch and taunt, right? Or whatever, their first attack and taunt. And their only secondary powers. And then they had primaries and pools, right? They had the fitness pool, movement, provoke, and their primary powers. And so for scrappers, a lot of scrappers did the same thing, except they ignored their secondary, and their secondary is defense, right? So you had super reflex scrappers who only had focused fighting and never took anything else for the first like 20 levels, because they were too busy we're taking our primary powers. We're attackers. So they didn't have any defenses. So now they don't have any better defense than a blaster, except they have a few more hit points, right? And they're fighting against melee enemies who do more damage, because the enemies at low levels were coded to do more damage in melee to help the blasters and the controllers and stuff survive at the lower levels until they got to higher levels, right? And so early on, a lot of people struggled in melee because of that. So one of the lessons to learn, and I struggled, but I didn't struggle as much as everybody else because I was taking stuff on both sides. So I had a crappy attack chain. I didn't have a closed attack chain until I was like 30th level. But I had good defenses pretty early on, although I certainly still had to take Swift and health. I think I took health at level 20 and stamina at 22 or something, because I had been taking my primaries and my secondaries, and of course my movement power. This is when the game first came out. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people who couldn't do it. Was City of Blasters for a reason, because you could hover, right? And when you're high enough up, they cannot hit you with their melee attacks. And most enemies had more powerful melee attacks than ranged, right? And so you could basically cut your damage by 50% or more by just staying out of their melee range. And so people who played blasters learned to do that. I never did, right? I always was terrible at dealing with hover. And part of it is because it's useless in melee, because you have to get close anyway, and what would the point be of just hovering around them? Wow, it looks like Liberty Lass is so short. I don't think she's that short. She's like 5'5" or something, and some of these guys look like they just tower over her. I mean, she's not like a 5-year-old. Well, the Megman doesn't tower over that much. Maybe the council guys are just huge. So yeah, there were a lot of people who played blasters and defenders and stuff because they could get out of range and it protected them. Now the thing is, this is temporary, because when you get into the higher levels like we are now, you start to encounter a lot more enemies that do powerful ranged attacks. The Devouring Earth are an example. Some of them have some very powerful ranged attacks, but then you get into things like Nemesis, you get into things like Malta, Cray. Those guys have a lot of very powerful attacks. And so what happened is, it was City of Blasters and scrappers were hard mode until everybody got into the like late 20s, early 30s, and had their SOs and their major powers in, and they took more of their primaries and secondaries. And we have one bead left to get to level 32, by the way. And then it's changed, right? The scrappers were able to survive melee and ranged, and the blasters started getting pounded because there were more ranged attacks coming at them, and they didn't have the defenses for it. Now, they learned to do some kiting, and I guess if you're really good at it, you can do that at the high levels, but I never learned to do it. I can do pulling, you know, but I always pull into melee, right? I don't kite. I just have no practice at that, really. So you may see a lot of really awful ranged play from me. Now with a Dominator, it's not so bad because they have some range attacks, although they do get into melee. They do have some melee attacks too. But with a Dominator, you can, even if the guy comes too close to you, you can immobilize him and back up, and that still enables you not to be subjected to their melee damage if it's bigger than their range damage. Now, some mobs it doesn't matter, right? Like with Vajalox, I think the Reapers do as much damage, and the Mortificators with their crossbows as they do with their giant meat cleavers. Yeah, man, she looks so short compared to these guys. We earned a badge for what? Indestructible. Probably how much damage we've been taking. Let's take a look. Most recent badges. Indestructible. We've taken 500,000 points of damage, but we probably dealt out several million. I think 500,000 gets you a badge. I think a million gets you a badge too. I do like that we can do AoE with 2 different attacks. So yeah, you're going to see some not super skilled ranged gameplay because it's just not what I'm good at. And not that I'm all that great at melee, you know, I don't do anything special. But I have a real comfort level with this. And it was just really interesting for me to read that comment because I'm like, I can't imagine being like finding ranged easier than melee just because I find melee to be so easy. And ranged is just not my, it's just not my thing. I'm just much more comfortable with melee characters. I always have been. Even playing like D&D and stuff, I was much more, or champions, I was much more likely to play martial arts and bricks than energy characters. So I often played martial artists. I love martial artists. I had a ranged character named Equinox, who was half fire, half ice. He was actually one of my first major characters. So I did it some, but you know, it's not a video game, right? And so you know, in pen, pencil and paper, you have a lot more time to sort of think tactically and decide what you want to do. And whereas in a video game, you have to be much more, what's the word for it? Much more sort of reflexive, right? You're just doing things kind of with muscle memory. That's why I'm able to talk while I do this, because I'm doing all this with muscle memory. And I don't have muscle memory for ranged in COH. Maybe I will eventually develop it. I eventually got muscle memory with the Mastermind, right? And I got pretty good at her. And I got good at the Dominator when I was playing in live. I got her to level 43. So that wasn't so bad. But I don't know if I'm ever going to be very good at something like a Blaster or a Defender. It's just not a playstyle that is intuitive for me. I guess if I played it as much as I played these melee characters, it would become that way. But I prefer the in-your-face melee character. I like paladins in D&D or monks. Right, when I got the... Was it Pathfinder? Oh, what's the name of it? The Pathfinder video game. The first one. Not the newest one that just came out, but the first one where you're a kingmaker. I didn't get that far, and I got to like 7th level and stopped playing it. I didn't find it all that fun. But what did I do? The main character I made up was a monk. Now you play a whole party, right? So obviously you have to have ranged characters and stuff, but the main character was a monk, and I loved that. I just thought it was really cool. Now why did I stop playing it? I actually played it, and I actually surprised myself, right? Because one of the things I've always thought is like one of the coolest things you can do in a fantasy role-playing game. And heck, it doesn't have to be fantasy. They've got ways of doing it in like the Horror Companion of Savage Worlds now, and probably will do sci-fi companions. Like building a base, building a headquarters. They had it in Champions where you could use your PowerPoints to create bases. It was awkward and not well designed game mechanic, but the whole idea was that each of the players could contribute a few experience points. And I think the way it worked, and you'd have to look it up in Champions 2, but the way it worked in the original Champions 2 is something like for every XP they spend on a base, they get something like 10 base points worth of stuff. And with a couple of hundred base points, which would be 20 XP spread among the groups, if you could 5, everybody contributes maybe 4 experience, you'd have a pretty good base. In D&D, of course, you could build strongholds and wizard towers and stuff like that. And I mean, I think this is so cool that I went to Matt Colville's website and I bought his strongholds and followers. I did the Kickstarter on it, I think. I bought strongholds and followers because it teaches you how to do strongholds and bases and headquarters in D&D 5e, and I actually wanted to do that with my players. I've always thought that that's like a super cool thing. So I should have been all over Pathfinder Kingmaker because basically you're doing that, right? You're doing that end game stuff, or whatever you want to call it, of basically building your own kingdom. You start out with one territory, but you can sort of expand out into other territories and build outposts and then upgrade them and stuff. I should have been all over that. I mean, that's a lot like playing a lot of the RTS games that I really like, the real-time simulators like Age of Empires and stuff, where you're doing the same kind of thing, or Civilization, which is a turn-based strategy. It was a lot like a turn-based strategy game mixed in with the role-playing game, and I should have loved it. Instead, I detested it. I did not like the base building, country running aspect of the game at all. And I'm not 100% sure why, except that I feel like they gave you too much to do, and it felt like every time I went out to adventure, then there was stuff that wasn't going to get taken care of in the kingdom. And that's extremely realistic, and it's, you know, forcing you to make choices that have consequences. But I just found it very frustrating that every time I returned to the kingdom, there were like 10 fires that had to be put out. And you only had like 4 advisors, so you couldn't put out all the fires anyway. And you could never tell. The other thing I didn't like about the game is there was an order you were supposed to do things in, but you could never tell what you were supposed to do first, second, or third. And so it ended up being very awkward to me. I had to start like looking stuff up, like why can't I do this? Oh, you were supposed to really do this other quest first. That makes this quest easier. And there's no way to know because it doesn't tell you that. There's no clue. And so, I don't know, I got a little frustrated with those aspects of the game and ended up quitting it at about 7th level. I mean, I know I could have set it on easy mode. There's a way you can kind of set the kingdom management on autopilot so you don't have to deal with it. But to me, it's like, well, why have it in the game if I'm going to turn it off? You know? And, I don't know, I found certain things to be a little frustrating about it. The other thing was, I remember the one guy saying with the kingdom management, but I think it's also true with your character, that he said if there's essentially a right way and a wrong way to build your kingdom, just like there's a right way and a wrong way to do character builds if you want to do certain things in City of Heroes, right? There's no completely wrong way to do character builds, but if you want to do Incarnate Trials, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, right? And so he said there's a right way and a wrong way to do kingdom management, and And if you do it the wrong way, you won't realize it early enough to correct it. And what he was saying is by the time he got far enough into the game to realize that he had screwed up the kingdom management and his kingdom was kind of hosed, he had to go all the way back into like the previous chapter of the game, right? There's like 4 chapters, and he had to go from chapter 3 all the way back to chapter 2 and play it over again, making the right decisions now that he has 20/20 hindsight and he's learned what not to do as in kingdom management. So like, yeah, I'm not going to go back and replay 8 levels of the game. And what my best friend said to me, I don't know if he realized that this is like going to make me not want to play the game, because he's such a buildaholic. He loves doing builds and kind of tuning them. We talked about build tuning in a previous episode. It's like one of his favorite things to do in a role-playing game is build tuning. He absolutely loves it. But what he said to me is, you have to be careful what levels you take, because you can multi-class and stuff, and what options you pick for the level up, because kind of if you screw it up, you can make it so that you cannot win the game because you're just not powerful enough to overcome the challenges, or your characters don't have the abilities that the designers expected you to have. Right? They give you all these characters you can choose from, right? But if you don't pick the right party composition, you will not be able to win certain encounters. And there's kind of no way to know that without trial and error. I'm actually not a huge fan of games where there's that big of an element of trial and error. I stopped playing Pillars of Eternity for this reason, that I felt like a lot of the battles you were just going to have to die 6 or 7 or 8 times until you figured out what was going to win that fight. And then the next fight, something different is going to win the fight, and you have to trial and error that one too. I actually don't like games that are designed that way, mainly because I prefer it when you can infer what will work from first principles, right? I don't have to try fighting the Devouring Earth several times and face planting to figure out which powers to use against the Devouring Earth or how to build my character. I am capable, from using first principles of how City of Heroes works and understanding the game mechanics, to design a character that will work in any encounter. That doesn't mean that all the encounters are easy, and I've still face planted a couple of times, and I've gotten near to face planting a bunch of times where I had to use my whole tray of inspirations not to die. But by understanding the game and understanding my character and playing skillfully with a single generic character with a single universal build, as it were, I can still succeed at the game. And so I prefer that type of a game to one where you have to die repeatedly or faceplant repeatedly in order to figure out how to win. Right? I actually got very frustrated at the the respec trial, the Terra Volta trial, where you go try to stop the villains from attacking a nuclear power plant, and afterwards you can respec. I got very frustrated with that because my group had to basically try and fail it several times until we figured out, okay, this is how to stop them. Because what happens is after you get through to the end, I think it's at the end, you have to sit there and stop waves of enemies coming at and we've leveled up. Stop waves of enemies from coming to the reactor and destroying it, right? And so there's they're going to come from a certain direction. If you know what they're going to do ahead of time and you've seen them do it enough, you can plan for it, bring the right characters and the right inspirations and everything into the mission, and use them in the right way at the right time, and you can survive it. But only if you've done it already and you know what's going to come next, right? And so we had to fail it a bunch of times before we were able to do it. And again, I'm not a huge fan of games that derive their challenge from there's only one way to win and you have to try this thing over and over again until you figure it out. There are lots of ways to win these battles in City of Heroes. I don't have to do it a certain way. I can lead in with many different powers. Are we anywhere close to finishing this mission, or should I just cancel it? I think we've got everybody on this island. Let's go to this island. You never know where these negotiators are. This is probably one of the most obnoxious. There they are. This is probably one of the most obnoxious missions in City of Heroes. This map is huge. You're often doing it at night. And the negotiators are really hard to find. And I don't know if this is true, but I suspect they might be on a system that only spawns after you've defeated enough other enemies. Because I feel like a number of times I have been in this mission, I have gone through it. You can probably watch some videos of me doing it with Silver Phoenix. I can't find them as I hop through, targeting every mob I can find. Then I start defeating enemies, and what do you know? I find these guys in a space I'm sure I looked at before. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've always suspected that that's what's going on with this mission. Alright, so we are here in Talos Island. Let us talk to our contact. We get a clue. And then we are going to go to Luminary and level up. And we're going to get our next superpower, which is energy transfer. And that's this one. And now we're going to go to our super base and craft some enhancements. So I can check it now. So what I want to do is put in some generic inventions. But first, let's create an accuracy. And we've got several healing ones. We might want to put those on one of our healing powers. So we have a level 30 accuracy. Let's go ahead and create it. We're going to put that on energy transfer. That was a mistake. Alright, let me pull Power Crash out of here so we can do it this way. So let's see what we're going to upgrade. We have 40 enhancements that can automatically go to 35. No, we don't want to do this. Now let me create another accuracy. I need alchemical silver. I can't remember if that's white or yellow. That's white. So we grabbed one. Create another accuracy. We're going to put that on Power Crash. Ah, I made a mistake again. No, that's fine. Okay, how many is it going to upgrade? 40. I screwed that up. Let me try this again. Let's do a recharge. Sorry guys, I need to not slot it. Let's create a recharge. But not slot it. Take the recharge out of total focus. Right? It's saying we can upgrade, we're going to upgrade 39. Then put the recharge in total focus. Upgrade 39. Okay, so it is not going to upgrade the inventions. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here. I'm going to make the inventions for the stuff we have, and then I will just, and I might pull out some things that I'm not going to keep, and then I will do the upgrades. So let me pause it here and I'll show you what I did when we come back. Alright folks, I just want to show you we have 9 orange salvage right now. Our enhancements are now, I don't know, pretty good. The primaries are mostly generic IO'd now. Some of the secondaries are, and we actually have fly and hover done. So we look at what we've done here. I've decided to go 2 accuracy, 0 damage for now. These guys will get damages as we continue. I've put these on endurance reducers because we've been having some mild endurance issues. Those should go away when we upgrade quick recovery and put a level 35 endurance reducer on it. Energy transfer, for some bizarre reason, even though it does damage, a lot of damage, It doesn't cost any endurance at all, which is strange. And I confirmed this by clicking on the endurance reducer. And when you click on an enhancement, I can't really show you now, but when you click on an enhancement, the powers that it can, if it's down here, the powers that it can be slotted into are lit up, and the ones that can't be are grayed out, and this one was grayed out. So I guess it doesn't use any endurance, which is awesome. So anyway, we're done crafting, and I did want to show you guys something. I went through the hassle of going to the Founders Falls enhancement store and doing the quest. It turns out, I guess, all the shops will offer you what you can use, because I came over to this shop over here, and she was offering me level 35 natural. Right? Dragon Strike. This is the one we use. Dragon Strike. So we're going to just put one in here, and we need to buy an extra quick recovery. So let's go ahead and grab the Dragon Strike and the endurance modification, and we will slot those in. And you see how when you grab it, everything that it can be used in lights up. Rest lights up, stamina lights up, quick recovery lights up, everything else is grayed out. And then this accuracy will go in here. So we're going to hopefully miss a lot less frequently now that these 4 powers are on double accuracy. So at this point, let's take a look at how much influence we had left. We had about 9 million when we started. It took about 500,000 to get all that done. Not too bad. And then to do our upgrade is going to take us about another 1 million. So it's about 1.5 million to do what I just did. I think it would be a little lower if you were just doing the enhancement. So we're going to upgrade everything to level 35. We're going to say yes. And now we have fully green enhancements. And what we will be doing after we get past level 35 is we're going to start, so these are 38%, you can see these are 36%, so these are better right now. So we aren't going to replace any of the SOs until we get, right, these are 34%, we're not going to replace any of the SOs until we get to level 35. At that point, these will be start to get worse, these are better, and we'll start having level 35. We already have a few level 35 endurance reducers, and those will then replace the white and yellow. The white and the enhancements are turning white and yellow. And hopefully we'll have the whole primary done by the time we hit 37. We should have most of the secondary done. Probably the thing that's going to be the hardest to do is the endurance recovery. These never seem to drop. And in the end, I often just buy the recipe from the station. When you go to craft, you can purchase the recipe. It's a lot of influence. And I just feel like I'd rather just use the drops. Now at this point, since we're at level 32 and we're getting level 35 drops, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start ditching all of the level 30 recipes. Since we're upgraded, we don't need them anymore. And that will buy us back some of the influence. I'm just making sure we're not ditching any level 35s. Because we're going to start getting level 35 drops now. And there's no point to slotting in the level 30 recipes. And we're going to get rid of the taunt duration because we don't use it. So that got us a whole bunch of stuff. Our salvage is all in the base, and most of the level 35, I think all the level 30 and 35 stuff that I tried to craft, I don't know if this is true for all of them, only used white salvage, 2 to 3 white salvage each. I think after you get to level 40, and definitely when you're doing recipes of things like the sets and stuff, those things are going to require yellow and eventually orange. Most of the recipes require something orange. So I think Iron and Rune are white, Corrosive Gas I'm pretty sure is yellow, and then Deific Weapon is orange. So this is going to require 2 white, 1 yellow, and 1 orange. And that's what happens with the sets. But for like the level 35 stuff and the 30 stuff, so far what I was crafting only needed white, no yellow at all. And so there's actually room in our white salvage racks now because I had to use about 20 items total to craft all these things. But what I've been trying to do is, so far, and we haven't bought any salvage, we haven't bought any recipes. All I'm using is what dropped. And using just what has dropped and the influence we've gotten from the auction house for selling stuff we couldn't possibly use that's you know, for masterminds and controllers and stuff. Look at this. We have a fully SO'd character with half the enhancements actually being level 30 and 35 inventions that are never going to expire. So then as we level up, it won't be increasingly expensive to add these, right? It costs us $1.5 million this time because I spent like a $500,000 doing all of these things, but we never have to upgrade them now. And so if we then spend another $500,000 over the next few levels upgrading all of these other things, right, to the generics, then when we go to like level 37 and we're trying to get the level 40s, we're only going to need like 10 enhancements or something. We won't need that many. It won't be that expensive. It'll be $500,000 total, right? And by the time you're level 42 and you're looking for 45s, everything's already done and you're starting to get sets. And so what you're paying for then is the sets, not the upgrades of the SOs, because nothing's expiring. And that's kind of how that works as we slowly shift from single origin enhancements to the generic inventions. And then in the 40s, we're going to start doing sets. But before we do that, we're going to finish all of these powers and make them generic so that they don't expire at all. And then we will take these out when the time comes to get sets. And then, of course, we also have our merits. So right now we have 418 merits, another 200 merits. I've been getting about 40 or 50 merits for doing the flashbacks in the level 20s. So a couple more flashbacks and a couple more story arcs here. And I would think by level 35 we can put our first ATO, our archetype origin enhancement, in. That'll probably go onto Bone Smasher. So I think what I may do is leave Bone Smasher alone. I'll have to read what the text of what the procs and stuff are, but my guess is it'll probably go on to Bone Smasher since that is up a lot. And the other one will probably go on Energy Punch. Not sure. It's going to depend. I'm going to have to look carefully at what it does and see which ones it's best on. But my recollection from the other sets I've had is it really didn't matter which powers you put them on. So I just, like the thing that does extra chance of a crit for my Scrapper, I think I put it on Storm Kick or something because it recharges a lot and you get a lot of chances at it. And so it's that kind of thing is the only real consideration. So anyway, we're done with that. We're going to be getting 3 slots per level now as we continue. And so that'll be awesome. We'll finish Rise to the Challenge. And we'll add a couple slots to Barrage and put some damage on it. And by 34, we should finish Barrage and maybe finish Energy Punch. And then we're done with those guys. And then as we get past level 35, especially if we take Hasten at 35, which is what I plan, we want to work on this one because this one allows healing as well. It adds max hit points to you. We definitely want to put that on there and enhance it. So that it'll add that many more healing. I don't think we need to put anything on fast healing. We don't need to put anything on quick recovery, I don't think. Rise to the Challenge. I don't know that we need anything more on there. We probably need Heightened Senses eventually. I think we're going to do that later. I don't think we need anything on Indomitable Will. Yeah, that also improves defense, right? But it's only psionic. So, I mean, psionic defense is pretty good. It's 75%. Putting 3 enhancements on it's pretty good. We might put some defense on there. So we'll have to think about that. But I think that'll come after we've got these other things slotted. And then we got to really start slotting these guys down here. Until next time, guys, I am Scrapper Lock, and this has been City of Heroes.